Welcome, everyone. It is good to be here for Mary DeMocker's book release party. What a friendly crowd, Mary. Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Patty Hine. I'm a volunteer director with 350 Eugene and one of its wow, that's really reinforcing. One of its three co-founders. My partner Deb McGee and Mary DeMocker are the other co-founders. I'm sure most of you know that the number 350 represents the number of parts per million of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere that scientists say is the safe upper limit. The parts per million is now bouncing around 405 and rising. This is why we started a local affiliate of 350.org to confront and find solutions to the greatest threat humanity has ever faced, the unraveling of our planet's complex, beautiful, and mysterious ecological systems. And that's why we're working as if our lives depend upon it, because they do.
Yeah, right.
Our life's paths and Mary's life path would likely not have crossed, but for a mind-blowing piece we read in our favorite periodical, The Sun magazine, in December 2012. That was the feature interview that month called "If Your House is on Fire, on the Moral Urgency of Climate Change." The interview with OSU Professor Kathleen Dean Moore. Right? We had read all of Professor Moore's books and loved the interview for her ruthlessly honest message about what's happening, who's to blame, and how to start dealing with it. And we were very curious about this Eugene interviewer, Mary DeMocker. By 2013, as you may remember, the Keystone XL pipeline pledge of resistance was spreading like wildfire across the country, and we had joined a regional training group to teach Eugene citizens to engage in peaceful civil disobedience in the event the KXL was approved. Midway through 7 intensive local workshops that we held, we met Mary DeMocker. She was the fiercest earth defender in a mock blockade scenario that we were facilitating. Tall, authoritative, stand your ground, unrelenting, and very loud. Who was this person who gave up her Saturday to meet with dozens of strangers to answer the call to risk arrest for an oil pipeline many states away, dubbed "Game Over for the Climate" by head NASA climate scientist James Hansen? We had to find out. So we followed up with her and arranged a meeting in her backyard under the wisteria arbor next to the neighborhood swimming pool and chicken cooperative. It was a bustling place. We started a conversation about our concerns about the climate and what community leaders could do about it. She said she'd spoken with Bill McKibben, our hero. She said he told her, "We should start a chapter in Eugene immediately. Don't wait, just do it." So that summer, we continued to meet and discuss ideas. And we joined Mary and her family, along with thousands of others, in Vancouver, Washington, where climate activists planned a massive rally and march called Summer Heat, with kayaks on the Columbia River, marchers on the bridge, and amazing art and banners and people rappelling from the bridge with pennants and giant signs saying, "Coal, oil, gas, none shall pass," with Mount Hood in the background. That sealed the deal. We were stoked. We wanted to be part of that movement and bring it to Eugene, and that was January 2014. From the very start, Mary's bold, creative ideas were spellbinding, and often we struggled to wrap our brains around her amazing and ambitious ideas, which engaged new and exciting strategies for the climate revolution. From knowing who's who in the local media, civic and activist organizations, schools, neighborhoods, to innovative art in the yard, projects that draw neighbors to collaborative creative expression and action, we found our fun partner in this difficult work. Our first inkling of her massive talent was when we helped her erect the now famous Condemned public art exhibit about the proposed Pacific Connector fracked methane gas pipeline that stretched her city block with huge signs on houses and storyboards lining the sidewalk, communicating with art the devastation that gas pipelines and LNG terminals have on public lands, endangered species, tribal areas, and landowners. Next, our Global March for Climate Solutions public art performance, where 500 of us marched and then participated in the switch from dirty energy, that was us with black plastic bags over our heads in the shape of a huge oil drip at Alton Baker Park, that morphed into a sun-shaped circle of brilliant yellow discs seen from the drone above and made into a movie that found its way into the London-based Climate Art Festival at Art COP21 in Paris during the UN climate talks. Yeah, and much more. Mary is a percolator. And like a surfer, that's what she told us, like on our first meeting, I'm gonna think about that, I'm a percolator, right? Mary is a percolator. And like a surfer, she watches the waves for where to put her energies that will best serve the planet. We've been blessed to share Mary's exceptional intuition, talents, and gifts, and been so happy to support her in this Herculean effort to bring the Parents' Guide to Climate Revolution Handbook to the world. The climate movement here in the Pacific Northwest, the thin green line, needs the likes of Mary DeMocker. She is nothing short of our lion-hearted secret weapon. Mother, partner, activist, artist, musician, music teacher, and published author, please join me in a very warm welcome for our own Mary DeMocker.
Wow. Just want to cry now. Devon County have been amazing leaders of 350. I'm so blessed to have you both in my life. Eugene is blessed, the Northwest is blessed, the planet is blessed by your gifted leadership skills. And leadership So I want to also start out by thanking Scott from Tsunami. And just say that this is amazing that I started out writing my second critique group, which is of strangers. First one was with Sally, she's here, and Holly, I think, is here. Who else was in that first one? Annie was with us. So it's great to see people from all aspects of my life here, from Waldorf School, from my neighborhood, from 350, from the writing group that we did here, which was, I don't know, 15 years ago. I see so many beloved faces here. I feel like it's my wedding day or my funeral. I'm never gonna have a party like this again. So thank you all for coming. I'm so blessed to have you in my community. And Scott, thank you for having this community for writers. I've watched so many writers on this stage and listened to so many and been inspired by so many. And it's because of spaces like this that writers get to share their work. So thank you for Scott. I also want to thank Don, who's videotaping right now. He's been so kind and generous with helping me with an M350 and other groups with his beautiful skills in photography and videography. So thank you, Don. I also want to thank just a few key people that really helped bring this book to life. One of them is Jen Thonis. Where are you? Jen Thonis, who gave me critique in her pajamas often, or in the backyard, or late at night. Mimi, where's Mimi? Mimi DeBorson. She's been here through it all. I met her when I was protesting back in New York 30 years ago. My husband Art. Forrest and Zanny, those beautiful blondies over there, all grown up now. Michelle. Where are you? Oh, Michelle. Michelle's listened to me. All of these people have listened to me a lot over the past few years on this book. Jenny. Kate. Where's Kate? Where's Kate Doyle? Kate and I have talked on many a hike. And I also want to do a special shout out to Justine and Aaron and Zanny and Forrest for the little box that they gave me for Christmas a year and a half ago when I was saying, God, I just need something sometimes to open up so when I'm really not wanting to write or I'm tired. And they kind of looked at each other, and then a Christmas morning I got this box called Motivations for the Marvelous Mary. And each one is this little scroll all tied up. And inside, whenever I'm sad or unmotivated, I open one of these, which is about once a month. And I have about half the box still to go. But it has been the medicine sometimes. I also want to introduce some special guests from here, the Juliana Inglesby family. Where are they? Where are Tina and Kathy? They listen to me a lot too, and they've helped a lot. And Mindy Schlossberg, who is running for eWeb Commissioner at Large. Where's Mindy? There's Mindy. Go talk to her. I love Mindy, and I think that when you get to the point where your planet is careening over a precipice, then you need a lot more mothers in power.
Amen. Right on.
Yeah. Avery. Is Avery here, our plaintiff? There she is. Avery McKay. And we have Hazel Van Emerson, another plaintiff here. And Karen Rainsong, who has done my website and been epic. So if you need web design, talk to her. We also have Melissa Hart. I thought I saw you. You came. What happened to your daughter's play?
It's over.
Oh, okay. So Melissa Hart gets a big hand because she's the one that said, Mary, why don't you write like 100 ideas? You've got so many ideas. Why don't you put it in a book form with 100 ideas? Okay. Thank you, Melissa. She's a wonderful author and teacher in town who has become my friend. And she had her hand in every single chapter of this book. And Julia Olson, who's part of this epic effort to bring justice to our children. And the last one, I think she's not here yet, Kelsey Juliana, our named plaintiff in the Juliana lawsuit, said she has a class till 8, so she's going to come. And there are so many others in the back of the book, and there are so many people that have had a role in this book that I want to thank and have thanked there. So housekeeping, there is tea and wine and juice and snacks and cake. The napkins, I think, are compostable, right? So,
yes, they are.
Okay, yeah, we were trying to make this kind of a zero waste affair, and we just didn't quite get to the plate part. And somewhere there are books that I recommend, right? Those get anywhere, that all the kids' books that I brought, those get put out for you to peruse? No? Okay. All right, another time. Okay. All right. Well, that takes up like 25 minutes, so thanks for coming. All right, we have to cut some stuff here. All right. So, I want want to start by telling you a little bit about my background. A lot of you know some parts of me and not other parts of me, but interviewers I find are interested in this. Like, who are you? And how did you become involved in climate revolution? So I think of climate revolution as primarily about justice. And I apparently started out in life fighting for justice because I have 8 siblings, and 5 of them are older. And you know, imagine, right? And my mother says my first words were, no, shut up, and get out of my room. This was kind of hopeless on my part because my crib was in the hallway. I naturally then became interested in justice on a larger scale when I was older, and as a teenager I also loved stories, and I realized that stories are what got me interested in people and in their struggles. So at 17, I didn't tell anybody this for literally 30 years, this is something I've only admitted lately, but when I was 17, I actually made a secret vow to God on a beach, under a full moon one night in the Adirondack Mountains where I was visiting with my family. And I swore to God, I will learn how to tell stories well so that one day I can bring more justice to the world. So I became an English major, and then I moved to New York to work on films because I was going to be a director of films, and became involved in social justice there at NYU, and that's where I met Mimi. And I played a lot of street music, and that's how I made my money, was, you know, working in the art department and working in Soho with my folk harp. I even worked in Central Park with my pedal harp before I discovered there are smaller harps out there. All of New York City to me was a stage for creativity and protest, and that shaped my sense of what's possible in public spaces, which we'll get to that later. I moved out to Eugene to study harp performance. That's where I met my fabulous husband, Arthur. And later on, with 2 children at home, my mission morphed into, kind of forgot about the storytelling part for a while, and I wanted to just raise happy, healthy kids who were empowered to protect their planet. I was worried about global warming, and we worked hard at the simple and green lifestyle, but I realized in 2007, that individual efforts were never going to be enough to stabilize the Earth's climate. And this is such a fundamental aspect of my book that I decided to open with it. Relax. This is not another light bulb list. It's not another overwhelming pile of parental to-dos designed to shrink your family's carbon footprint through your eco-superheroism. In fact, drop that light bulb. Stop recycling, get off your bike, stop gardening, leave your cloth bag in the SUV, and bring hamburgers to the family picnic. Let your faucets leak, leave your windows open with the heat on, and for God's sake, don't hang your laundry. Busy parents, along with everyone else, have been told for years that individual lifestyle changes can stop climate from spinning out of control, but the truth is, they can't. Not by themselves anyway. This book kicks aside that great myth so we can refocus our efforts on actions that can accomplish what those lifestyle actions intend, to build a livable future. We cannot save our kids' futures just by recycling and turning down our thermostats. Trying to live lightly on Earth is good for us, and it models healthy habits for our kids, but it's much more important now to shrink industry's footprint. And that means changing our system, not just our light bulbs. So I began to work in 2008 for system change, using the skills I had, which happened to be in music, theater, and writing. So then I picked up that earlier life's mission thing, and I wove it into my second mission, and refined it to raise happy, healthy kids while restoring the future using the arts. And restoring, I think, is a really beautiful word because it means not only to restore, but to tell a new story about what's possible. So I started with my own front lawn. With my family's help, I made 15 installations to engage passerbys in social or environmental issues in ways I hope would be fun and imaginative and would kind of slip around their defenses. And I have a story about that in the book called Dress Up Your Door. Those installations grew bigger over time and involved the neighbors, and you'll hear about that later. One of the things I also did was begin to publish commentaries about climate. And so I want to talk about what do I mean by climate. To be clear, the climate I'm talking about refers to our atmosphere, yes, but it includes much more. Each of us inhabits multiple climates: the climate of our individual body and its health, the climate of our home, relationships, neighborhood, schools, and workplaces, as well as our national, political, and cultural climate. We each have a right to feel safe within all of these climates. A right to a safe workplace, good health care, safe shelter, and freedom from violence and oppression, and particularly freedom from violence on our streets and in our schools. We have a right to healthy air, soil, and water, and all present and future generations have a right to a livable planet. All of these climates are deeply interconnected, and they're also badly threatened today, so much so that in 2015, Pope Francis wrote an encyclical letter addressed to every person on the planet decrying income inequality, war, and degradation of the earth, our only home. He spelled out how climate destruction disproportionately punishes the poor and the most vulnerable of the world, and he called for a transition from fossil fuels to clean energy. He then issued a thunderous call for bold cultural revolution. Revolution from a pope. Yes. Right? He gave us a clear moral directive for revolution, but perhaps not being a family man, he was a bit short on the details of exactly how parents might go about waging revolution. Now, I don't claim to be writing the roadmap, but I hope this can be a roadmap that will help all of us, particularly parents, navigate our way. The worldwide climate revolution boasts no saviors or silver bullet solutions. Instead, it's made up of millions of assertions of authority over our own futures that, taken together, are transforming our societies on every level. That kind of transformation requires many maps, and this is the family-friendly one, with plentiful games and snacks to sweeten the journey. So why a book for parents about climate change? They're the busiest people on earth, right? Yeah. But every parent I know would do anything for their child, and we're really good at teaching them to cross the street safely and to alert an adult if they're being bullied, or to not text while they're driving. Parents also want to protect their children in the long run. Kids are the most impacted by climate breakdown, and it's up to adults to turn things around right now through what I call climate revolution. So revolution means replacing one system that no longer works for another system that does. For our generation, the dirty energy system has to be replaced with a clean and renewable energy system, or our kids aren't going to make it to our ages, my age anyway, in my 50s. That's what's being predicted by the top climatologists on the planet, that we have to turn things around right now, or the planet will not be habitable in the coming decades. So this is the real deal. This is what keeps me up at night. So, climate revolution requires us to say no to everything that harms the climate and the earth. That means no new coal, oil, or gas projects, no subsidizing polluters, no to fracking that poisons our water, our drinking water, and causes earthquakes. So for me, this comes pretty easy because, this was apparently my first word. Right? No. But all of those no's are nested inside of this big and beautiful yes. Yes to life. Yes to anything that supports life. Yes to anything that supports a thriving future for children. Yes to anything that points us to smart climate policy. Yes to clean and abundant energy from wind and sun. Yes to green jobs. Yes to accurate science and efficient and high-speed clean public transportation. And to healthy soils and forests that pull carbon from the atmosphere. This revolution is happening in many countries worldwide, so the first thing we want to do, I think, is talk about it. So here's a little excerpt from Shout from the Solar Roller Coaster. And the epigraph. So each one has an epigraph, which is a little quote at the top that kind of says what the chapter's about, and then has ideas from 2 to maybe 15 ideas for varying amounts of time, money, and interest for your family, or your classroom, or your congregation, or your patients, or your clients. Just saying, not as much as a parent book. I gotta think marketing here, right? Right. I'm getting used to this reading thing. I have to hydrate one moment, so talk amongst yourselves. Okay. R. Buckminster Fuller has the epigraph in this one. You never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. Nature designed us to obsess on the negative. Tell me 10 things I'm doing well and one that needs work. And I'll forget the 10 compliments and fixate on your single criticism, even processing it in a deeper thinking part of my brain. Ask about my childhood, and I'll tell you stories of broken bones and teenage heartbreak, forgetting all the good, and you'll do the same. Right now, on the climate front, we're hammered with bad news, both about its terrifying impacts and regarding the foolish decisions of those in power. That sentence must have been written when Obama was still president, I think. So I think they're not just foolish decisions anymore. They're actually unethical, mean, and thuggish ones. The ratio seems reversed. For every positive development, there are 10 negative ones. This is why we've got to celebrate every win, even small ones. If we can pause and resist our natural impulse to dismiss victories and mourn losses, it'll help lift our spirits and remind us that the clean energy transformation is already happening. And it can be a lot of fun. Given where things stand right now, I consider it my sacred duty to shout good news often and exuberantly. Parents can do that in many ways, including through mealtime and sideline conversations, social media and letters to the editor. Since editorial page rants and finger wagging rarely actually inspire people, why not instead effervesce about local school kids learning to compost, or how American solar employs more people than the coal, oil, and gas industries combined? Better yet, shape the news. Did you know that anyone can send a press release to the local newspaper, magazine, or radio or television station? When my family on 350 condemned our neighbors' homes and installed a block-long fake pipeline to protest the proposed pipeline through Oregon, our press releases sent to local editors paid off in front-page news coverage. You or your young in-house reporters could give a shout-out about forward-thinking farmers, highlighting those who are switching from conventional to no-till farming to improve the soil and capture carbon, or promote a local program offering rebates for new electric cars. We need climate heroes who install solar panels in refugee camps, or who sue polluters. And we need heroes who publicize this good work and help change hearts and minds and inspire hope. So here's a sample of the kind of good news that I shouted with my community on social media and by word of mouth in the fall of 2017. Number one, there are eight little shout outs here. Denmark's biggest energy company just abandoned fossil fuels and became the world's largest offshore wind farm company. How cool is that, right? TransCanada canceled a major tar sands pipeline project in October. China is building the world's first smog-eating forest city and the first floating solar power farm. They also have one in the shape of a giant panda, which I think is really cool. And a dragon. France banned new oil and gas exploration. Yes. Copenhagen has more bikes than cars. Nevada and Washington passed laws that will create thousands of new solar jobs. And since I mentioned roller coasters, California's Great American Amusement Park is powered by 100% renewable energy. So now it's your turn. Find foot-stomping, soul-feeding climate news that uplifts, inspires, and entertains. And then tell everybody.
Woo-hoo.
Thank you. Okay, so there's a little problem. All that is great, right? We have a little problem here in the U.S. The U.S. could lead those efforts and be a global clean energy superpower, right? But instead, our government is now run by bullies who are turning our country into a petro state. Trump wants to dig up or drill for $50 trillion worth of coal, oil, and gas. That's what this infrastructure thing is all about. It's locking our kids into dirty energy for the next half century. So one of the ways we can fight this is through the vulnerability of this, just logistically, to get tar sands oil from the middle of Canada all the way through the heartland of the U.S. and over the Oglala aquifer, by the way, all the way down to the Gulf. That's a long way, and to get the coal out to the coast, that's a long way, and to have the oil trains going, that's a long way. So the vulnerability is that they're long transportation routes, which means they go through a lot of different communities that have to give permits. So one of the things Bill McKibben said years ago when he came here was, choke it off. Yeah. So that's what we've been trying to do with this, by fighting the Jordan Cove pipeline. It's the only pipeline proposed from the West Coast to go to Asia, and they're desperately trying to get fracked gas through the West Coast. And BC said no, Washington said no, California said no. Everybody, there's a wall of green on the West Coast, but they found a little niche in Coos Bay where they have some vulnerability economically, and they need to have some economic support there. So they've gone in that direction, and there's a fight. So I'll tell you a little more about that later. But we have projects in our own regions here to stop. Here in the Northwest, we have a ferocious resistance led by a coalition of groups, including many Indigenous leaders, students, community volunteers, and families. And you can meet many of those groups right inside this building tonight, because there are 9 nonprofits here. So I'm going to name those right now. You're going to have to help me if I forget any. Nearby Nature, so nature immersion. Friends of Beaufort Park and Mount Pisgah, so that's more nature immersion and recovery. 350, Eugene. Our Children's Trust, showing up for racial justice. ULO Climate Justice League, okay, the Cascadia Wildlife. The NAACP of Springfield and Eugene. Anybody else I didn't mention? I just want you to have your moment now. Okay, so we got them all? Okay, so those are out front. Please find out about what your local heroes are doing and how you can support them. Okay, when my family heard about the Jordan Cove pipeline, you've already heard about that. Okay. The good news for all of us is that we have hundreds of tools that parents and teachers and grandparents can use to engage with these fights in ways that work for our own families. Okay, so I printed this out, and the color printing makes it impossible for me to see what the name of the chapter is I'm supposed to read. Okay, so here's one way that one of my neighbors helped. Bury your neighbor's dead chicken. The African proverb that opens this is, if everyone helps to hold up the sky, then one person does not become tired. One hot summer's day, my neighbor Jen opened my studio door. Cow is dead, she announced. Cow, named for her black and white plumage, was a favorite in our shared flock. Now the beloved chicken was lying claws up in the backyard, near where the children were playing. Cow needed disposal, if only so the kids wouldn't accuse us of traumatizing the other hens, who were forced to step around their fallen sister. But I had a pipeline to assail. Only 90 minutes remained before the deadline for my newspaper commentary. Yes, the chicken was rapidly decaying in 97-degree heat, and proper sanitation at least required that I grab a shovel. I kept typing. A few minutes later, Jen called through my studio window, "My climate activism today is to bury the dead chicken in your backyard so you can finish writing your damned commentary." This drove an important lesson home to me. Not only do I have great neighbors, right? But Jen is a busy parent of 3 who doesn't identify as an activist, but in her own way, she's happy to aid my planet-saving mission. She doesn't organize rallies or challenge senators on the editorial page, but her everyday kindness helps me to do those things. This is not a new idea. Jacqueline Woodson tells a story in her beautiful free verse memoir, Brown Girl Dreaming, about Miss Bell, whose white employer threatened to fire her if she saw Miss Bell marching for civil rights. So, Miss Bell didn't march for civil rights. Instead, she hosted lots and lots of secret meetings and fed scores of people who marched over and over. During the civil rights movement, many people like Miss Bell did the critical work of caring for marchers on the front lines, just as many people worldwide help today by supporting activists in our battle for climate justice. Remember, there are countless roles, big and small, showy and quiet, in our shared planet-saving quest. Sometimes everyday heroism is overlooked. The smaller stories of love, bravery, and sacrifice don't always seem to measure up to more dramatic, historic moments. But it's still heroism, and the great actions we spotlight need that background support. Okay, and I'm gonna, let's see. All right, I'm gonna skip the next one. I don't get too tired. Okay. So, 350 Eugene was involved in the pipeline in our neighborhood, as you heard. And I want to just tell the story about how big an impact that was on me. Also, disclaimer, I did not build that pipeline at all. The man who built the pipeline is right back there. And Deb Lee. These two. Yeah. I got to be kind of the conceptual artist, but Art was the one testing the pipeline for 2 weeks in the backyard. So I'm like, how does it change when it freezes at night? And indeed, they all turned. All the wires just turned. So he came up with a brilliant fix. And then some of the neighbors were, there were hundreds of these stakes to hammer into all the people's front lawns. And that was some of the kids. So as you know, and as you've already heard, it was a block-long pipeline, but I did have a point to this. There was a story to it, and the story was, hey, there's a threat. There's this really bad pipeline. It's going to, take the planet down. Yeah, it'd be bad for Oregon, but hey, there is something you can do about it. And what you can do is send a nice postcard to the governor. And my kids and their cousins made a couple hundred beautiful handmade postcards, and we stamped them and addressed them to the governor. All people had to do was put their name and address on it and sign it and put it in our little mailbox, right? And then there was a selfie station, so you could take a picture of yourself in front of the pipeline and tweet the governor. So we had the college girls were telling me, you need hashtags, Mary, not just postcards. So this epic thing got on the front page of the local paper, and it ended up getting statewide publicity for the 5 days of the installation, and was on radio and TV, and my neighbor Emma got on TV, which was really fun. And what I was thrilled about was that it helped start a conversation statewide, because then we started that coalition, right, the statewide coalition, which was great. But what really struck me was how happy the children were to have played a part, whether it was doing the artwork, or like hanging condemned signs on their own houses, or helping with hashtags. So that was a kind of pivotal moment for me, realizing that it's not only unifying and fun, but it's empowering for young people. And we are going to need to help them because they have a big fight in their hands. So it's even more important now to amplify youth voices. All right, so this is my penultimate one. Just so you know, how much longer am I sitting in this hard chair? Okay. Oh, sorry, I have to hydrate. Okay. Meet your neighbor, okay? Turn your neighbor and say, hi, my name is... Okay, everybody know each other now? You're friends now. Don't ignore each other when you see each other at the grocery store, okay? This is one of the things that Bill McKevin says we need is the technology community, which is the technology of how to work together to get things done. We're so isolated now, we're so plugged in. but we need to get to know each other and then say hi next time you're in the grocery store together, all right? Promise me that. Everybody promise? Whoever you met tonight, you're going to say hi at the grocery store, okay?
You're on it. First yes,
Right.
I name it too in my life.
Okay, pipe down now. Okay, amplified kids' voices. So this is from my friend Elliot Chipper, a friend of my neighbors. In the climate issue, it's hard to make a kid your enemy. Kids hold the moral high ground. On Thanksgiving weekend in 2015, 3 leaders of our local high school Earth Guardians / 350 Club faced a crowd of people gathered to demand a binding global climate treaty from world leaders meeting in Paris. 15-year-old Wesley Georgie took the mic. How many people know Wesley, right? How many? We know we have a right to clean air, he shouted to the hundreds of listeners gathered at the county courthouse. We know we have a right to clean water, and we know we have a right to a positive future. As people cheered, he handed the mic to the next speakers. Avery McCrae. Hi, Avery. And Hazel Van Elmerson. Where is she now? She's still here? The two of the girls suing the U.S. government for destroying the climate and violating their constitutional rights. And I want to say I saw a certain plaintiff slip in, so let's just all, like, Kelsey, hi Kelsey, can you wave? Happy David mouthful, sorry. Okay, so here's Avery speaking. Honestly, I wish that we didn't have to spend our time doing this. I'm a 10-year-old girl who likes riding my bike and playing with friends and listening to music and just having fun. But adults are simply not doing enough about this issue. Then the kids taught the crowd a chant in which the kids called, "Kids who want a future are amping up the sound. Let us hear you shout it.
Keep it in the ground."
Some of you were there. From the head of the march, the kids kept that call and response going all the way through downtown, which was packed with holiday shoppers, and into a riverside park. I then led the crowd through the interactive protest art you've heard about from Patty, the 450-person human oil drip that transformed itself into a bright sun as we filmed it from above. After which several kids were interviewed by reporters for the evening news. That night, Wesley said to his mom, "This was the best day of my life."
Wow.
What I've learned during several years of trying to mobilize the public for climate action is this. People want to hear from the people most impacted in their community, which in this case is young people. For their part, kids like to give adults a piece of their minds. Many kids, including my own, are bewildered as they witness adults destroy the climate. They ask fearfully, "Don't adults care what happens to us?" Perhaps one reason it's been so hard to build the climate movement is that we've gotten this part wrong. The public we're trying to mobilize doesn't want to hear from people like me, or angry young white guys, or even scientists. Not really. Most people don't want to anyway. They want to hear from the people suffering the most, including our children who can't vote yet, but who will be left in the wreckage after we're gone. In this kids and their audience recipe, parents are the secret sauce. Most of the stuff that happened at that 2015 event wasn't organized by the kids. They wrote the speeches and built the buzz in their media worlds and led the pack that day. They brought energy, sparkle, and adorable posters. But their parents and 350 volunteers wrote the press releases, built the giant puppet, rented the park, hired a videographer, brought first aid kits and medics, changed batteries for the megaphone, and so much more. It was similar to any film or theater production I've worked on. Dozens of people toil behind the scenes, but when the show begins, all the audience really cares about are the actors. This doesn't mean parents have to throw a big climate march to give kids a platform for expression. Many parents find it satisfying, though, to help kids do something. And if there's one thing my parenting generation has down, it's kid advocacy and logistical support. Maybe two will follow, right? So first, brainstorm with your kids. Listen to what they love to do, and think about upcoming events or holiday tie-ins. How about a Kid Climate Cheerleader Squad outside the football stadium. Thank you to Kelsey and her family for this one. Happily performing chants and dance moves to cheer on the climate after the big game. What was it, Kelsey, about the ducks? What was the cheer?
Stop global warming over all dead ducks.
Complete with pom-poms. They have the green Mardi Gras beads on. How about a kids' climate art show on the walls of your favorite bakery? An entry in the annual city parade? A teen poetry slam on the climate breaks night? Organize one event, even just one humorous short skit for one talent show that features kids' voices. Or put it on YouTube. You don't even have to organize anything. Get your phone out. Give it a try and see what happens. Wait, some people ask, isn't this manipulating children for our own political agenda? Well, I think I'll let a young person answer this one. After her court appearance for her climate lawsuit against the federal government, 19-year-old Kelsey Juliana agreed to speak with a reporter. Midway through the interview, the reporter asked if perhaps Kelsey was being used for adults' political agendas. Kelsey, who was very tired of this line of questioning, fired back, "You're saying that because you're afraid to give young people credibility. You're nervous about our power because we're informed, upset, and taking things into our own hands. That's intimidating to you. So instead of listening to us, you try to shut us down." When the article appeared, the reporter shared that part of the story and her positive regard for Kelsey's passion and power. So then it's followed by some ideas for how to help, whether you have 3 minutes, 15 minutes, or an upcoming rally. All right, let's see. Okay, so now we're on to how my mission statement just wouldn't sit down and behave. It kept evolving. So now my mission statement is, now that I've discovered that young people really are, and families I think are the secret sauce for bringing artwork and authenticity and passion into new public spaces, here's my new mission statement. I help parents, grandparents, religious leaders, counselors, medical providers, and educators restory the future alongside young people. Our generation has the expertise and the resources and the connections to the power structure, and the young generation has the passion and the moral authority. So one of the ways that I'm trying to spread my message about climate revolution to the busy parent and teacher population that has no time for my message is to remind them that what's good for the planet is also good for children. So for example, cultivating awe in nature, which is what Nearby Nature and Friends of Beaufort Park and other groups are doing, it makes children more likely to protect it, but it also makes them better and happier people. Blocking a new fracking operation helps the climate and the whole planet, but it also protects local drinking water. Reducing materialism is good for the planet, for family budgets and closet space, but it's also good for our souls. Planting trees captures carbon, but it also gets families out in fresh air, or students out in fresh air and off of screens. Protesting a proposed pipeline makes it more likely it won't be built, which is a benefit for the whole planet, but it also teaches our kids civics, which is becoming a lost art in our school system, so that's empowering for them. Any kind of active engagement in solutions, from decorating bikes with earth-friendly signs to marching or demanding climate literacy in your school, connects us to one another, because doing those climate literacy campaigns up in Portland that were successful, that was a result of parents talking to one another and to teachers and going in together. So lodging our own preferences to our elected officials or our principal, that's somewhat effective maybe, but it's much more effective, according to the teachers I interviewed, and you can read that in the chapter on climate literacy. Susan and Carrie Ann, where are you? They told me, maybe they were gone now, but they told me that it doesn't really work on your own. You have to talk to one another and get together, and so that was helpful for me. Doing this with children empowers children, and it energizes the conversation for everyone. Okay, so I want to emphasize that this book is not about doing more things. I said that at the beginning. I don't want to overwhelm people. It's got 100 ideas. Think of it as a menu, But another way to think of it is that we're not doing more, we're just doing things a little differently. So for example, if we're already donating to environmental groups, a lot of us are, even just a few dollars makes a difference, we can give to groups who are working for a fossil-free future instead of the groups, you may not know this, several of the biggest ones have polluters sitting on their boards, and those are shaping the mission statement of, for example, Nature Conservancy and Environmental Defense. Those are both groups that are huge and international, and they have Shell and BP. I'm not sure exactly which one has which, but it's pretty shocking actually. So that was something I learned in my research. That's something you can just do differently, pivot to a different group, and you can read about how to do that in this fabulous book, 100 ideas to support local grassroots. We want our children reading anyway, so we can offer inspiring books about real people like William Kamkwamba in Malawi, Africa, who used scrap metal to build a windmill to bring water to his family during a drought that was killing people in his community. There was a great deal of suffering, and that brought hope to his community. So those are the kind of stories like Wangari Maathai, also The Trees of Peace. There's a book, I did bring them, I don't know, if we can maybe just put them out, Zandy, if you want to just sort of hold up the bag. I brought 2 bags of books because sometimes you're not sure, if you see it on the library catalog, on the website, if it's something you really want to reserve and make a trip downtown. So being a mom, I brought you a bunch of books to look through, and you can order them from Scott.
Yes. Tsunami. Woo!
Yes, Tsunami. Okay, we need to eat anyway, so we can choose more plant-based foods and reduce our meat consumption. As you probably know, there's a lot of methane involved in animal agriculture. We're going to talk over meals anyway, and this is a key thing that I like to talk about, is to steer conversations away from complaints and despair, and toward understanding how government works and how to elect better leaders. That's an important point. I find a lot of my conversations with people are they're often full of despair. So I talk about despair in here and how we can light ourselves on fire and how we can become victory speakers. Okay, we can also, the last one, I have a whole list here, but I want us to get to more cake soon. We can make consumer choices, and one of those is, where do you bank? Are you banking at JP Chase Morgan, who's doubling down on fossil fuels now that some of the companies have actually bowed to public pressure and stopped funding the Dakota Access Pipeline or the Keystone or the other ones that keep popping up with different names in different places? Or might you put your money in a local credit union? Ours invests in local businesses and local schools and gives bikes out to students. So Oregon Community Credit Union, other ones I don't know, but that's mine, and that's a key place is, where do you bank? Okay, so we don't have to invent the wheel. That's one of the main messages of my book. You do not have to start an organization. You do not have to throw a rally. All you have to do is look at the wheel and touch it a little bit, push it along a little bit in ways that work for you. And there are literally probably 500 or more ideas for that. And we can just support other people who are already doing things. We can support school administrators who are trying to do zero waste lunch programs. We can plant trees. We can also support groups like Plant for the Planet who are trying to plant 1 trillion trees by 2020. We can support local candidates who are truly fighting for clean air, water, and soil. And we can put signs everywhere for those candidates, on our bikes, on our cars, on our front porches. And the key for me, I think, is to make it creative and to make it fun. And the last thing I want to say is to show up for events when numbers matter. Yeah. So our Children's Trust has a trial starting on October 29th. Put that on your calendar, put all kinds of stars and hearts on that day, or go onto their website and see what day they want. They want people there. I would assume October 29th is one of them. It matters when people show up because judges look to crowds as indicators of where society's moral compass is pointing. So help them. If you do one thing in one season, make sure that it's something where numbers matter. So go to the protest if that's where the energy is. go to the hearing if that's where the energy is. Go to city council if a vote is up. Just, kind of keep dialed in. And a lot of the groups here tonight will keep you dialed in. One of the things that I say is that it's time for the left to learn how to win. We've been losing for decades, really, on the biggest scale. So I'm about us thinking about ways that we can get over ourselves sometimes and link together and win some of these battles. It's about policy changes. Trump cheated his way into office, but he's actually able to make policy. We don't need to cheat our way because we're the majority. Most people are good people, and most people, even Republicans, want carbon regulation, clean air, clean water, and clean soil. So we need to find creative new ways. We're not going to outspend them, but Bill McKibben has often said we use what they don't have, which is our creativity. And I would add that we have our love. We have relationships. And the reason that people are here tonight is because most of you love me and my family. I don't see that many people I don't know here, so that's what it's about. Okay. Also, I'm going to say one more thing. If you want to do something, put a review on Amazon. I've got one from Teresa Ripley, a 5-star one. Thank you, Teresa. But it does matter, right? I mean, don't we all kind of, look on the Amazon thing like, well, is this any good? So, IndieWire, Barnes & Noble, those are the online sellers. Of course, I don't want you to buy them from them. I want you to buy them from Scott because I'm here to do 300 copies. So tell everybody to buy them here, but then put reviews on Amazon. Okay, this last one, Battle to Win, is with apologies to my kids. Frederick Douglass leads this one off. Power concedes nothing without demand. It never did, and it never will. It's 3 a.m., and I'm staring at my toddler's rear end. After waking to the dreaded, "Mommy, my butt itches," I shine a flashlight and spot a white thread diving between her little buns. Pinworms. What a brilliant design. Children swallow their eggs, which hatch inside kids' intestines. Then the worms crawl out every night to lay millions of eggs, which irritate sensitive skin, so that the kids scratch and then get the eggs under their nails, which they then stick in their mouths, and swallow more eggs, and around it all goes again. I'm sorry, but there is a point to all this. I never knew until I had kids. Whew. Eggs even float on air, so when parents sweep, mop, and launder, we're at risk of inhaling them. If we take the prescription worms be gone drug, we can't tell for a full month if we've actually killed the worms, and we imagine our bums itching, and assume that we've inhaled the eggs, so then we wash and mop obsessively. I did anyway. So why am I telling you this? Because I can't stop thinking about how similar pinworm infestations are to fossil fuel infestations in democracy. We find the sneaky little critters in our museums, regulatory commissions, big green groups, retirement portfolios, global climate negotiations, and yes, running our government. Parasites never leave without a fight. One year, we exchanged pinworms with another family 7 times. Praised, we all finally agreed, Jonestown-like, to take the nasty drug together on the same day. This family is in the audience. And wage a blitzkrieg of showering, garlic eating, butt cream slathering, floor mopping, hand washing, nail clipping, and sheet washing. It worked because we learned pinworm habits and vulnerabilities, and then we fought them intelligently and relentlessly. Which is exactly what we must do with our fossil fuel infestors. Here's how in 6 steps. Number 1, observe parasite agendas. Pinworms want our bodies for breeding grounds. Fossil fuel infestors, Shell, BP, ExxonMobil, Coke Industries, and the politicians they fund in Congress want our public lands to pump, drill, and frack for profit. Number 2, Understand parasites' hostility to the commons. Pinworms are not community-minded. Similarly, the right wing and its oily bosses attack the commons, the atmosphere, waterways, soil, and resources we collectively inherit and pass on to our kids. It includes wonderful collective creations like libraries, parks, scientific research, social programs, public universities, and government itself. Infestors attack government when it protects the commons and try to eliminate Social Security, Medicare, voting, bargaining rights, public schools, public lands, public housing, and other hallmarks of democratic society. Number 3, expect parasites to remain parasites. I've met many pinworms, but never a reformed one. You can't beg, partner with, or meditate away pinworms. ExxonMobil has had 40 years since learning that its product dangerously heats the planet to embrace and accept the truth about climate destruction, and it's still refusing. Number 4, unite around a clear agenda. Working together is key to eliminating infestations, but action must be timely and goals must be clear. When we fight together and strategically, we do win, but fight we must. Number 5, use the proper remedy. Lice shampoo will not cure pinworms. Complaining about infestors over beer or mocking them on late night TV doesn't really lessen their grip on our democracy, but organizing to flush them out for good does. And last, practice lifelong maintenance, preventative maintenance. Politics is really just personal hygiene on a larger scale. It never ends. There are always parasites seeking hosts, whether in our bodies or in our democracies. So defend both. When our bodies one day feed earthworms, we will rest peacefully, knowing we've left our worldly treasures for our descendants to enjoy and to protect. Thank you very much.